Hi everyone and welcome back. This is just another help video for lesson 16. If you are struggling, say on part 10, you can fast forward this video, all right? But I'm gonna go through each level just in case you're having trouble with any of it. So with the frog jump, it says, look at the frog jumping game to the left. It looks like the game from the last lesson, but the frog moves the mushroom if it hits it. So let's take a look at this. See how it kind of tilted? So we're going to make things happen if things collide with each other. So that's going to be your collision detection. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So part 3, it says the code below uses the sprite's X and Y positions to check whether they're touching. It will change the balloon sprite's animation when the tack touches it. Maybe the tack will pop it. Use the arrow keys to move the tack until it touches the balloon. So if I use the arrow keys, it didn't quite touch the balloon, but it popped. All right, if I come down here, oh, it popped. So that one looked okay. See how it popped up there a little bit too high? We're going to talk about how to deal with that. So it says you do not need to change any code on this level. Read the if statements inside the draw loop and find the different sprite properties and how they are compared. You can't discuss with a partner, so we'll talk about it here. So there's a lot going on here. I don't want you to be freaked out by this code. You're not going to have to use that. Look at how many things are stacked in there. We're going to learn some other code that's much shorter. This is all going to be hidden behind it, just like the addition with the velocity. So it says basically, if the tax x is greater than the balloon's x, and the tax x minus the balloon x is less than the tax width and the balloon, that's crazy. We're not going to get into all of that right now, but basically it's a whole lot of math. So basically you're trying to determine when all the conditions are right, where the tack and the balloons X and Y values are colliding. So instead of doing all of that, we're going to use the collision detection. Okay. So don't think that you're going to have to put all of that code in. That's, again, the behind the scenes of the is touching block. Writing out the math each time you want to check whether two sprites are touching can take a while. So a programmer created the is touching block, which can check whether one sprite is touching another sprite, which is called the target. The computer is still doing the same math as the previous program, but you don't have to worry about typing that all in. All right, so inside the draw loop, drag the is touching block into the if block. And don't forget to change the sprite to balloon and target to tack. Okay. And those are interchangeable. You could use the tack as your sprite and the balloon as your target. It doesn't matter. All right, so right now we got some parameters empty. So you'll see the debugging stuff come up quite a bit. All right, so if the balloon hits the tack, or if the tack touches the balloon, it's going to change its animation to pop. So you have your balloon sprite, your tack sprite, and then this new sprite animation is what the balloon will become if the tack hits it. Those are things you have to create ahead of time. They're all defined up here. So now we're going to use this new block. If the balloon is touching the tack, or if the tack is touching the balloon, it doesn't matter, then the balloon's animation is going to go to popped. All right, so if we hit run, now if I move it over, the tack hit the balloon, so it popped. All right, so that's much easier than using all that other stuff. All right, so let's just work with that this lesson. These are all things that you're going to use when you create your games. on like Mario Brothers, for example, when you hop on top of one of those little guys, I can't think of what they're called, it smushes them. That's all kind of a sprite and a changed sprite. That's what's happening. It's just a little more advanced. All right. When the apple hits the blender should turn on. So right now we've got to figure out our code. Use the is touching block to make the blender shake back and forth when the apple sprite touches the blender sprite. The shaking motion is already coded using the random block. It's kind of like the B, where it was randomly going between, -5 and 5. All right. Can you make the apple disappear when it touches the blender? That's going to be our challenge. All right. So the apple's created, and its speed, velocity, Y value is 5, so it's going to be falling, and the blender is there, and its animation. So basically, we want to use the it is touching block, like it said, if the apple is touching the blender, or the other way around, then the blender's X is a random number. See how it's 200 plus or minus 5, so it's going to stay centered at 200 but kind of go back and forth, so it's going to look like it's shaking. So let's run it. All right, but normally the apple wouldn't go beyond it, so we're going to need to make something else happen to make the apple stop moving. So let's play around with it. The velocity would stop moving, right? So if the apple is touching the blender, we can make it disappear. Or you could have it stop moving. There's different things that can happen. Why don't we try this visible block? So if the apple is touching the blender starts to shake, and the apple, oops, it would help if I spelled apple right. This is dot visible, we would make false. Let's see what happens. All right, so it looks like it just dropped into the blender and the blender shook. All right. You could also have it stop moving, but then you'd still see it there. You could have it disappear when it got to like this point. But the is visible block is a lot easier to use. Okay. Part 6. You can also use code to play a blender sound. So use the play sound block from the world drawer, to play this sound here when the apple touches the blender. You'll need to paste the address of the sound into the block so it looks like this. All right, so let's give this a try. So we're still working in the same thing, so everything's still happening here. We've still got our stuff that we put in from last task. So now not only do we want the blender to look like it's shaking and the apple to disappear into the blender, but now we want to have it play a sound. All right, now you can copy and paste from up there. You can also look in the file. It should be in there as well. Okay, well, why don't we go up and just use the one? So we can just copy and paste that. Control C. Control V. And make sure you get your quotes at the end. Let's see what happens. There it is. Okay. Let's move on now. So part 7, we'll do some more with this. Because that's how you're going to have, your game, maybe you'll collect coins and add points, or maybe you'll deduct points if you hit certain things. There's going to be all sorts of things that you can do with this block. All right, when the rainbow touches the horse, it should turn into a unicorn. It didn't turn into a unicorn because there's no code there. So animation, we got a rainbow, our horse, and our unicorn. We don't have to add anything there. All right, so it says use the if is touching and set animation blocks to change the horse's sprite image when the rainbow touches it. The unicorn image is already loaded. Okay. So basically the horse is created there, the rainbow is created. Its velocity x and y are stated, and that's because it's moving diagonally. That's how you make it move diagonally. And then we want the horse to change. So inside your draw function, that's where we want to put our if statement. So if, put it below the background. If the rainbow is touching the horse, then the horse changes to a unicorn. So the horse's set animation. Let me scroll a little bit here. So we're going to change the horse's animation to the unicorn. All right, there it is. That's all there is to it. All right, and you can do so many things with that. Try and think of ideas as we're moving through these, because you're going to have to design your own games that you really want to add some fun features to. All right, debugging collisions. The balloon is popping before the tack touches it. When the sprites aren't doing what you expect, you can use the debug block to get more information about why the sprite's behaving that way. You'll use this a lot coming up. But it says run the code and use the arrow keys to move the tack to pop the balloon. All right, it's not even near it and it popped. So we're going to figure out why. And debugging is figuring out the problem and fixing it. So it says in the code below, change the balloon's debug equals false to debug equals true, because it's basically going to have us, you can add this code in to figure out what's wrong. So here it doesn't care. It thinks it's doing everything right. If you set it to true, it wants you to help figure out the problem. There's the problem. The shape around your balloon is a rectangle. You can change it to a rectangular square, and we'll talk about that. But as soon as that tack hits that rectangle, it pops it. So we need to make it so that it fits better. See how that rectangle fits that shape better, but with the balloon, that's not working. All right, so we're going to have to fix that. And we'll see that come up with a lot of our sprites here shortly. Add new code add a new debug block to the code and set the tack sprites debug property to true also. Because you see how you don't see that green box around it? It's because it doesn't have the debug in there. So we're going to add that to it so we can look at the tack as well. So we'll look at the tack. We're going to set that to true so we can see its shape. So now you can see if those two collide, there's where it pops. All right, now the shape around the tack, that's pretty close. All right, it doesn't have that huge gap around it like the balloon did. All right. It says run the code again, then discuss with your partner why the balloon is popping early. Again, it's because of the blocks touching. Can you use the animations tab to resize the balloon picture so it pops in the correct time? Good question. So let's go to animation. Right now, basically what you're seeing is your sprite is this entire picture that you see. So if I want the balloon to fill this out more, I can maybe change its size, right? Maybe you can zoom in, maybe you can crop it. Let's try a couple different things. All right. So the first thing you should always do before you change anything is make a copy in case you mess up. So I'm just going to make a copy and we can play around with that. So we're on the copy. Right here, crop the sprite. That's the easiest way to do it. You can also play around with other things, but that's going to be your easiest way to do it. So I'm going to go back now to my code. I'm happy with that balloon. I'm just going to call it balloon 2. Well, maybe we'll just change this one. So that way we don't have to change everything in the program. So we changed both of them. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my code. Can you use the animations tab to resize the balloon? That's what we did. So now when I hit run, the balloon makes a little more sense there. And it pops. All right. And then if you want those boxes to go away, you can just change this to false. All right. That was just there to help you figure out where things are touching. All right. And again, you're going to use that quite a bit coming up. Okay, part 9, scoreboard. You can also use is touching to decide whether you should increase the score. So we're going to really start to create our games even more. In this game, the score is stored inside the score variable. It's displayed on the screen using the text. So let's see what's going on here. So the score is 0 right now. If I hit the up arrow, there must not be any code for is touching yet. We'll make it so the score changes. Okay, so use the if and is touching blocks to determine whether the bunny has caught the carrot. If it has, we're going to use the counter pattern on the score variable to increase the score. And we're going to reset the carrot's X position off the right-hand side of the screen. Set the carrot's Y position to a random number between 10 and 390. So basically what will happen is the carrot might show up there the first time, but then when it hits it, it's going to go to it started over here again, but it's at a different height. All right, so it'll look like there's a variety of different things coming, but it's really just the same sprite coming randomly across. So let's go and add that in. So we have our bunny. We have the carrot, which is showing up at 450 for your X, which is just off the screen, so you don't see it, but its Y value is a random number between 0 and 350. Its velocity X is at -5 because it's moving left at that speed, and the score is starting at 0. You're going to have to add this in, so remember this. All right, we've got the background and then the ground itself. Drawing the score, it was black, the text size, the score, and then the word score is in quotes. And then the score itself, those are separate, is happening over here. So the 0 and the score are not connected as far as your code goes. All right, so if the carrot is less than -225, the carrot's X goes back to 450 and its Y value goes a random number here to here. If the bunny's Y value is greater than 344, so that means if the bunny's standing on here, then if we hit up, the bunny goes up. If we let it go, the bunny goes back down. All right. This actually works unlike that last one that we did. If the bunny's Y value is less than 80, that means if it's less than 80 up here, then it's going to drop down. Okay. So when the bunny touches the carrot, so we're going to add that in there. So our sprite is touching. Oh, it would help if I had my if statement. If the bunny is touching the carrot. Whoops. Whoop, what is going on? Oh no, come back. Sorry. If the bunny is touching the carrot, then we want to use the counter pattern on the score variable to increase the score. We'll do that first. Now your score is up here. Okay, so the score starts at 0. So I'm going to go back to that. You can just grab this one here. Oh, come on. You can grab a blank one. My goodness, come on. You know what? We're going to do this. Let's grab this. So the score is going to be equal to the score plus 1 if it touches. But then also, let's see what else it wants us to do. Reset the carrot's X position off the right-hand side, which would be, we'll say, 450. And then the Y's position to a random number between 10 and 390. Okay, so it's going to look just like what they did here. The carrot's X is going to be equal to 450, and the carrot's Y is going to be a random number. Because that means it'll show up over here to start again, but it's going to be at a random height. So the carrot's X is equal to 450. It's not 400 because then you'd see it right there. You want it to kind of take its time. And the carrot's Y, the sprite.y, is going to be a random number. Instead of between 1 and 10, we're going to go between, let's see what they wanted, 10 and 390. So basically in this space. Because if it was higher than that, it might not show the whole carrot. Oops. 10, tab, 390. All right, let's see. Oh, so I got it. Score is going up. It disappears. Starts at the beginning. And you're creating your first game. And if you get to 10, maybe you become the winner and winner appears. There's all sorts of things you can do. Definitely want to remember that score, though. All right. So improve your game. Now that you know how to use is touching and play sound, you can make some fun things happen when your sprites run into each other. Note the play sound block now has an extra parameter called loop that can be set to true or false. If this parameter is true, the sound will continue to play in a loop over and over again. If it's set to false, it'll stop after 1. So do this at least 2 effects when your sprites collide. And challenge add a scoreboard to the top of your screen. So I want you to use what we've done. Okay, remember this is the game we're at. We can make our frog jump. Maybe you want to change how it jumps. Okay, but you want something to happen if they end up colliding. Maybe you want it to jump over it. Maybe we're going to add in some other things that it can't hit if it jumps. But if it does hit it, maybe your score goes down 1, or, there's different things that you can do. Okay, maybe if it hits it, it makes a nasty sound because it shouldn't have hit it. All right, so get creative. If you want help with that, I'd be happy to help. Have a great day.